Hi, welcome again to our first time homebuyer video series. This portion of the series features Suzanne Metzger, who you've met before, a CPA from Magnuson McHugh here in Coeur d'Alene, and Laura Young from Mountain West Bank, and myself, Tammy Wagner from Lakeshore Realty. We're going to do something a little more informal this time. We're going to do a question and answer session just to clarify some things about the tax credit, the first time homebuyer, options for financing, that kind of thing. So thanks to you both for joining us again.
Well, thank you for having us.
You bet. So I'm just going to start asking questions, and then, you know, if you guys have questions for me or questions for each other, jump in. So the first one I'm going to talk to Suzanne. So you're saying that if I haven't owned a home in the last 3 years, and I buy now, I can qualify for the $8,000 tax credit.
It's the greater of, the lesser of 10% of the home price, or $8,000.
Right.
So that's what we're looking at right now.
Okay. So really, most houses in Coeur d'Alene would qualify.
Yes.
Haven't really seen an $80,000 house lately.
No.
No. So that's good. So if my spouse owned a home, but I didn't, can I get half the credit?
No, if your spouse owned a home and you didn't, neither one of you qualify, because when you're a married couple, that home ownership in the prior 36 months transitions to both parties. But if you're a girlfriend and a boyfriend, or just two individuals living together, then you can reasonably allocate the credit and have it available to you.
Right. So if my boyfriend, if I was moving in with my boyfriend, which I wouldn't, honey, if I was moving in with my boyfriend and he had owned a home, but I hadn't owned a home, I could qualify for
yes,
the
you could.
and get the $4,000. That's
and
cool.
reasonably allocated to you in any way, shape, or form.
Right. Cool. Okay.
What if you said the spouses couldn't? Now, what if one spouse had not owned a home in the last 3 years and bought the home as married and sole and separate? Was that still?
That still counts.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Cool. What happens if I'm already expecting a tax return, or if I already filed my tax return this year?
Well, if you've already, yes, you definitely still qualify, and you can choose to either amend your 2008 tax return to get the $8,000. So it's a simple election. Or you can choose to wait and do it on your 2009 return.
And it's like a true credit. So if I filed my tax return and I didn't buy a house and I was going to get back $2,000, and then if I buy a house, I'm going to get back $10,000.
You got it.
That's
Sweet.
correct.
Sweet. Okay, that's good. So Laura, you talked about using the tax credit as a down payment. Can you tell us more about how that works, and does it matter which loan program I'm using? You know, can that only be used with certain loan programs?
It does matter which loan program. IHA, which is an Idaho State Bond Program, is providing second mortgages up to $7,000 for people to pay their down payment.
Great.
And then next year in spring of 2010, when they file their 2009 tax returns and apply for the $8,000 tax credit, they will then take that tax credit and pay off whatever they borrowed from IHA to do that down payment. Now that's only allowed if you do an IHA in combination with any other loan program on your first mortgage. So you'd have to do like an FHA IHA loan or a USDA IHA loan on the first mortgage to get the IHA tax credit advantage second mortgage.
So here's a question that's come up, and I hope I can explain this right. But so if you had a USDA loan, so say you were qualified with USDA for $100,000 as a mortgage, 100% financing, and then you found a house for $105,000, could you finance through USDA $100,000 and finance the down payment, like $5,000, the other $5,000 as an IHA second?
You could possibly do that, or if the appraised value was $105,000 or more, USDA will actually let you finance over and above the purchase price of the home.
Oh.
So if you, yes, they would let you go up to the appraised value and finance that to use that for closing costs or down payment, whichever you would need to use it for.
Cool. Cool. That's great. Okay.
Excuse me, Laura. On the IHA Second Advantage program, what happens if the taxpayer unfortunately may have had arrears in child support or something happens, and then they don't get that credit.
What IHA will do at that point, if the second mortgage is not paid off by July 1st of 2010, IHA is going to take that amount of the second mortgage and they are going to amortize that over 30 years at an interest rate of 3% above what your rate is on your first mortgage. Let me clarify that a little bit. The IHA rate for the first mortgage right now is 5.5%. If you could not pay off your second mortgage by July 1st of 2010, they would take that amount at 8.5% interest and amortize it over 30 years. Payment would be about $55 a month. When the house is sold, that second is paid off, or if that house is refinanced, that second is paid off. It's a lien, it's a deed of trust on the property, just like the first mortgage.
Oh, that's cool. So they don't lose the house or anything if they...
Nope, they'll just have another payment to
Right,
make.
okay, got it. So Suzanne, if I qualified, so last year the tax credit was $7,500 and it had to be paid back. If I qualified for that $7,500 tax credit, is there any way for me to get the $8,000 instead of the $7,500?
Right now, unfortunately, the IRS and the current administration is not allowing that. If you have entered into a principal residence agreement in the last 36 months, you're not eligible for this credit.
Right. And you can't, that $7,500, if I bought the house in 2008, I have to pay it back. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Can you remind me again what happens if I sell the house after I get the tax credit?
If you sell the house after you get the tax credit, I believe it's 3 years, that then you don't have to pay back.
Okay.
There's not a repayment. There's also issuance of, if you sell the house for a loss, there's no repayment either. So you're kind of hedged and protected against that. Also, if there's a sale based on the fact that if somebody passed away, if there was a married couple that bought a home and the wife,
Was forced to sell.
there's not a repayment issuance there.
But with none of those coming into play, if you sold the house within the first 3 years, then you would pay back the $8,000?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think it's the first 3 years, and no, you definitely,
Right.
and then also remember, if you buy and sell within a year, you're not eligible for the credit at all.
Correct.
Right. Here's another question we've gotten sometimes is if you owned an investment property, so you haven't owned your principal residence, you've been renting, but you actually bought an investment property and it was a rental, and then you decided, with the tax credit, I'm gonna buy my first principal residence. Would that investment property make you ineligible, or would you still? No. Because it's a permanent residence.
The rules are your principal residence. So if you owned a rental and rented your principal residence, which I know of a lot of people, especially on the East Coast, that do that, or in major metropolitan cities, they'll rent in a major metropolitan city, but actually own a rental property somewhere else for an investment.
Right.
If they have that situation, they're still eligible for the credit.
Right. That's great.
Good to know.
Yeah. So going about actually claiming the credit, I think I saw something from you recently where there is no requirement to actually prove when you file your tax return that you bought a house, but they are starting to do more audits on that?
Yes, the IRS is really starting to do audits on that. So our recommendation at our firm and for several people that I know is just cover your bases. If you're doing an amended return, rather than get selected for verification, just include a copy of that one-page settlement statement with your return. If you're amending right now, if you're amending your, most likely paper filing, and that, so what's one more piece of paper if it speeds up the money coming to you?
Right, yeah.
And we're providing at closing for our first-time homebuyers, we're providing a copy of the IRS Form 5405 and a separate copy of the settlement statement attached for them in a separate envelope to make it really easy for them to either amend or to have that to do their 09 taxes, yes.
Perfect.